Hello, everyone. I'm David Rodriguez. We're going to talk about what it takes to get from where we are today to a thriving on-chain carbon credit ecosystem. I'll start with my path to ReFi. It started in 2008. I ran a forestry initiative in Mozambique on a Bill and Melinda Gates grant for an organization called TechnoServe. And I saw firsthand the challenges of afforestation, deforestation, and what that does to climate. It changed me. Over the last decade, I've been in venture capital. I've worked for Greycroft Partners and built my own fund, Draft Ventures. At Draft, we invested in 75 different companies. 7 of those are now unicorns, and it's the top performing of its vintage. I've also operated many companies as COO. I usually operate in the earliest stages from about 10 people to hundreds of people. I sold one company to Adobe after several years of building it. My last company was valued at $2.5 billion in the private markets by Coatue, Tiger, and D1 Capital Partners. And then I was in search of life's work about 2 years ago and came across and knew I wanted to be in climate. I came across ReFi, went down the rabbit hole, and things changed after that. In today's agenda, I'm going to talk about that journey. I'm going to talk about why I'm investing in ReFi and on-chain carbon credit markets. I'm going to talk about what's wrong with those markets. And I'm also going to talk about how we get from where we are today to a healthy and thriving on-chain carbon ecosystem. So why I'm investing? We're in Paris, and we're in a record heat wave with record wildfire seasons. June was the highest recorded in Earth's warmest months. Deforestation in Brazil, biodiversity loss, list goes on. The world's sick. We need to move now. That imperative is urgent. On the left here, you see the graph that we've seen earlier, and carbon dioxide atmospheric concentrations rising. One of my portfolio company CEOs, Raf from Toucan, calls this humanity's worst bull run, and I agree. But I think there's the other side of the story here. On the other side of the slide, there's a lightning bug. When I was younger, I grew up in New Jersey, and in fields near my home in New Jersey, I used to play with these lightning bugs. It was like a rite of passage for kids in the neighborhood. And I learned that there's over 170 species of these lightning bugs. And when I go back to that field, there's no more of them. And that's really sad for me. It's sad for the ecosystems that they support. And one of my mentors and favorite authors, Charles Eisenstein, reminds us that it's very important not just focus on the carbon narrative. It's reductionistic. It makes us overly focus on one thing that's this invisible thing in our atmosphere, and to really connect and care about the earth and the beauty of the earth. And so a little call out to that before we go back to the carbon in this presentation. So why I'm here, I think it's a highly compelling investment opportunity. This is a huge market. It's $50 billion if you go by the McKinsey study. Mark Kearney, who's the UN Special Envoy for Climate, says it could be up to $100 billion. It's highly fragmented. There's over 25 players that call themselves carbon marketplaces, with other layers of the stack even more fragmented with no large incumbents. And it's a supply-constrained market, which is super compelling as an investor. And there's just a very low barrier of entry given the lack of regulation in the space. I love this quote. The next 1,000 unicorns won't be search engines or social media companies. They'll be sustainable, scalable innovators, startups that can help the world decarbonize and make the energy transition affordable for all consumers. This is Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock. And the last thing is that the drivers of demand will continue. This is consumers like you and me that are demanding not to work for employers that don't have CSR responsible policies. It's the corporations that are responding to that. Now we have over $130 trillion worth of corporate assets that those corporations are pledging net zero. That's huge. That's the size of many countries. And now we have Web3 demand coming online. This is treasuries. This is different DeFi and Web3 consumers coming into this market as demand sources. And lastly, why I'm excited is Web3 tools are advantaged. We have better tech and tools. The legacy carbon markets have lots of challenges. They have a trust and transparency challenge that Web3 solves through immutability, through transparency, through provenance. They have liquidity challenges, coordination challenges, which the interoperability and fungibility and DeFi solve. And finally, we have compostability, and we need to act quick, and the compounding returns of compostability are essential to doing that. Finally, we have more capital than ever coming to the space. We have ecosystem grants coming into the space. We have venture capital. We have corporates investing. It's a powerful time, and that's attracting a ton of talent, and that's super important for us. So all that said, what's wrong? First off, before we get to Web3, the existing markets have its challenges. The quality of supply and type of supply is tough. We have only 3% of projects on the top 4 registries are pure removal projects, which are removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere instead of avoiding them. It's a very small amount so far, and that needs to grow. There's quality issues with some of the other supply. 77% of project issuances of last year were RED Plus or RE projects, renewable energy projects, and there's issues with those in some of those projects, such as establishing baselines and leakage in RED projects, and non-additionality of renewable energy. And then some of the credits on the existing registries are being retired older and older, and that's also a challenge. Second, we have MRV and standards are a bottleneck today, and this has to get fixed. We have a concentration of gold standard and Vera making up about 80% of the voluntary carbon markets. We have barriers for projects, so only large projects can actually get credits. It's not cost effective, and they can't get on the radar registries. So a forestry project, you need 1,000 hectares to kind of make it make sense to get carbon credits. And some of these are long development cycles, so 3 to 5 years to earn credits in some cases, which is a huge cash flow challenge for projects. And there's also a lack of verifiers in the space, and it's still based on very old technologies. You look at the picture on the left, the Vera protocol for forestry. You have people still measuring trees with tape measures and manually inputting data and walking around forests with clipboards, and that's a problem. Second problem, moving on from traditional markets, is ReFi had a really tough freshman year. We were having a trust problem. The market's been opaque. We have Web3 issues of the bull and bear markets in general, and the news cycle wasn't great with the upswing of Klima and then downturn of Klima. And we have a marketing problem. The way we talk, there's a lot of Web3 attention in our communities, in our bubbles, but not engaging with the climate community. And we talk in our crypto lexicon, and we need to do our best to reach out to the existing climate communities. We also have a talent gap. When we look at the Venn diagram of people who are experienced, multi-time successful entrepreneurs, people who know climate and people who know Web3, that overlap is very, very small right now, and attracting talent into the space and then educating talent is a huge opportunity for us. And there's just slow adoption by some of the current registries. May 25th announcement of Vera was a big signal. And that's causing a lack of on-chain supply. Even though we have 20 million plus VCUs on-chain by Toucan and some others like Moss playing, there's still a lack of supply of on-chain carbon credits. So how do we go from that to a thriving on-chain carbon market? I'm going to lay out a path here and some of the things I'm excited about and looking at as an investor. The first thing we need to do is win corporate demand. So demand is concentrated in this market with the large corporate emitters. So that's automotive, that's the aviation and airline industry and the energy industry. And the benefit of that is that if we convince a few of the large buyers of carbon credits to move over to on-chain, the rest of the market, the brokers, the traders, other buyers of carbon credit and corporates will follow that. That's the opportunity. And so the people in this room, let's work closely with those people and those corporations. And for me as an investor, I'm looking for startups who have those relationships, who are working closely with those corporations and collaborating and building with them. I'm looking for people that are on the demand side aggregators and marketplaces. And some projects like Senkin and Toucan and Atom and Flow Carbon are the ones that are examples of this, but we need more. Second, once we have demand, we need to build on-chain supply and do that by moving financing way earlier in the cycle. And so the fastest way to supply is to bring capital there, and to do that with leveraging DeFi by creating new structured projects and pools, and move past what we do today is a lot of the forward carbon credits are done with 6 to 12 months of issuance. They're certified and pre-issuance. We have the opportunity to move that even earlier in the cycle, work earlier with projects and structure products to get those projects capital earlier. And so there's a ton of opportunity for on-chain credit or structured products in forward carbon credits. We've seen this in other markets in DeFi. I'm an investor in companies like Goldfinch and Gia that have done this in microfinance and other areas like large PPP projects and infrastructure projects, a company called Silta. The idea is let's find areas where there's, central banks don't serve the need of bringing capital in those markets, like carbon credits, and fill that with on-chain and Web3 companies that can bring DeFi in the space. That's a huge opportunity. We're looking at, we like companies in the space. We're looking for more companies like Solid World, Green Trade, and others. Third is we need innovations in MRV on-chain if we're going to move anywhere. And so new methodologies beyond the current methodologies and standards have to exist. They're going to be on-chain coordination with trust and automation. We're going to integrate with new sensors and these MRV technologies off-chain. I've invested in some drone companies like TreeSwift that can create 3D point clouds of forests growing instead of just measuring with a tape measure around a tree. That exists today. So integrating with these companies, bringing data and digital reporting on-chain and having access to that. And what we'll see is instead of going through legacy off-chain registries, more direct issuance of these carbon credit on-chain. And so we're looking at the space at MRV protocols, different data players in the space, community design methodologies that are dynamic and not static that exist for the last 5-10 years and haven't changed. And so companies like Regen Network, One Shot, MRV Collective, and others are innovating in the space. 4, we need infrastructure. We need primitives and liquidity to scale. That's tokens, that's pools, that's bridges to bring credits on-chain from off-chain or across chains. It's infrastructure in the space where we can create pools or baskets or funding products in the space for others. And finally, there's accessibility to data to bring more transparency into the space and supportive tech around the space. And so we're looking at this space really closely, how we can invest in infrastructure players, how we can invest in the data structures that will change, and data players that will change the space, companies like Toucan, Declimate, and many others. 5, and this is where I get super excited, is Web3 brings opportunity beyond what legacy players can ever do. And so, how do we build new products now that we have supply, demand, and these primitives above and beyond? And hopefully what that means is we move beyond just carbon and we move into other eco assets and other world positive actions where we're getting capital to flow towards impact using the power of Web3. And we're looking at the structured financial products that will do that, derivative products. How do we automate retirement and purchase of carbon credits, consumer applications, gaming? These are fields that haven't been built up that are super exciting that can only exist in Web3. And finally, excited, and the next step here is to build a collaborative ecosystem. It's something that doesn't happen in legacy markets and what we need to do together because we all win together. We have interoperability and composability in the space that is our advantage. And it's highly important to have these ecosystem players that are supporting it, like Filecoin Green, like Climate Collective, like ReFi DAO. And we're super excited. And the venture funds like us and Allegory and Florey Ventures that are helping to support this ecosystem. And we all need to do this together. And so in closing, I'm super excited about this space. I moved my fund, my LPs, my time into ReFi for a reason. I'm a big believer in what we're building here together. I think there is challenges I named, but they're surmountable. The off-chain and legacy ecosystem will get better, and the on-chain will accelerate that. I think there's a really clear path, the one I laid out, to getting to where we are today, to a healthy and thriving on-chain ecosystem. It's moving the demand, it's building supply, it's creating the primitives that we need to build on top of, and building that infrastructure. And finally, it's working together. It's getting together, building the ecosystem community, and working together to make this change. And with that, I'm here to help. I'm here to support. If you have any ideas, companies, people I should talk to, I'm happy to. And so thanks so much for your time.